With Jimmy Carter's victory over President Ford in November of 1976, the transition process began. And as the transition entered early January of 1977, the swearing in comes on January 20th, when Carter would take office. There was a review of all of the professional staff members at the National Security Council, and we would be advised about whether we would be retained, kept on, since we're not political and professional, but it might be that the new National Security Advisor would have different ideas about whom he wanted or how many people in any particular area. So we eventually, in early January, were given slips, and there were 4 of us working in Asia, and all of us got, and they are pink slips. We got a pink slip saying that we would be returning to our home agency. Now, right across the hall from me, there was a young CIA officer who, like me, was on loan from his agency. He was working in the Soviet area, named Bob Gates. So we thought, well, he must be like the rest of us. We're all being let go. But in fact, Gates not only was kept on, he was moved across the street into the front office where Tony Lake and others would be staffing the president and would be staffing Zbigniew Brzezinski, the new incoming national security advisor. And I was wondering, how did this happen? Why are we going and he's getting to stay? Whatever it is, Bob Gates, of course, went on to be the head of the CIA, the Secretary of Defense, and would have one of the most illustrious foreign policy careers of the 20th and 21st century. He would also be president of the Texas A&M University, and he was a huge fan of Dr. Norman Borlaug, the World Food Prize founder. So I've had Gates back to speak several times at the World Food Prize. But this was an interesting process. So now, with just a couple of weeks before we literally pick up and go back to the State Department, what was I going to do? I remembered Governor Ray had said we sure could use a guy like you and I thought maybe I can go out to Iowa, work for him. But I found out that the program by which we loan State Department officers to governors and mayors, called the Pearson program, you have to be 10 years in the service. And I had only been in about 8 years. So I couldn't do that. So I was assigned to go to the economics course, kind of a hot item in 1977. A lot of Foreign Service officers wanted to get some economics training because trade and economics were becoming a bigger and bigger part of diplomacy. And so I had my assignment. I put in for it. I got it. I had my Samuelson textbook all ready to report to the Foreign Service Institute and spend 6 months kind of getting a college minor, I guess, in economics, after which I'd get an assignment working someplace in the economic area. At least I thought that's what was going to happen. So I was down to about my last week or so before leaving, packed up things in my office into boxes, ready to go, when the phone rang. And I picked it up, and I was talking to a man named Richard Holbrook. I had heard the name, but didn't really know him. I'd never met him. He had been, like me, a Foreign Service officer. served in Vietnam in the Mekong Delta a little bit before I did. But now he had left the Foreign Service, and he apparently was going to be the new political appointee, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and Pacific. So he identified himself, and he said, my good friend, Frank Wisner. Frank Wisner was a man who would take a huge interest in my career, become one of the most distinguished career ambassadors ever. And Holbrook says over the phone, Wisner told me about you. I'm looking for somebody to be my special assistant. Could you come over to see me? So I thought, sure, why not? See what this is about. I told him I would. He told me to come over to the State Department Transition Office, probably even that same day, late in the afternoon. I did it. I showed up, and it was another one of those small conversations that has a large and profound impact on your career.